Hello, and welcome to my first tier ranking video. I've watched a lot of other people do this and it looked like fun, so I thought I'd give it a try. Today I'm going to be ranking all the books I read during quarantine. Quarantine for me started last January 2020 and is going to be ending this week, actually. I'm going to be getting my second shot. So 2 weeks from now, I guess, but the book that I'm in the middle of reading right now is 900 pages and I probably won't finish it this week. So these will be all the books that I read during quarantine. I'm currently in the middle of my goal to read every Stephen King book ever published, which is a lot. So about half the entries in this tier list will be Stephen King books. The rest are going to be other horror, suspense, and science fiction books. Horror and science fiction are my two favorite genres, so I read them a lot. I only added one customized tier rank to this list, and that's did not finish down at the bottom. It is not often that I will stop reading in the middle of a book, but it does happen. As you'll see below, those are the 24 books that I read during quarantine. They are all on my Goodreads page, so if you have a Goodreads account and would like to follow what I'm reading and what I'm rating, I'll leave a link to that in the video description. First up is a book I just finished a couple weeks ago called Needful Things from Stephen King. This one is definitely going into the A rating. The thing that impressed me most about this book is just the way that there are so many characters and so many threads that have to be juggled, and King pulls it off perfectly. It's not just like one antagonist, it's like half the town is antagonizing the other half, and not in some general like army battle way. It's in very specific, very personal ways. I can't imagine the work that went into that book. Next up is The Martian, the debut novel from Andy Weir, and that is oh shit, I didn't realize it would move the page like that. I loved the movie, I loved the book. The two are very similar, which I think is a huge compliment to Andy's writing. Most of the time when you're adapting a novel for the screen, there's a lot of things you need to change, but this was written so well and so visually and so cinematically that they really didn't need to change much, which if you're a fan of the book is fantastic because you get to see almost every scene played out on screen. Okay, next up is Dark Matter by Blake Croak, not sure how to say his last name. This is going into the A tier as well for me. I actually don't remember much about the details of the plot, but my rating on Goodreads was pretty high, and I have positive feelings towards the book after reading the synopsis again, so I'm gonna trust past Allen and put it up in the A rank. Later by Stephen King is the next one. That came out earlier this year. A rank. I think what I like about this book is that it plays with people who see ghosts in a different way, and I love the rules of the world in this book. Some people can see ghosts in this world, and once someone passes and becomes a ghost, they cannot lie. So these people that can interact with the ghosts can ask them questions, and they must answer them truthfully. I think that's a fantastic setup, and I really enjoyed what King did with it. Okay, Artemis from Andy Weir. A lot of people hated this book. I think it's because The Martian set such a high bar that any second novel was bound to be compared to it and bound to not live up. I didn't hate it as much as most people did, but I also didn't love it. So we're gonna put this as our first C rank. I think the thing that gives this one a little bit of a bump for me is that I read it using the audiobook version, and Rosario Dawson was the narrator, and she really nailed the character. So it was a lot of fun to listen to / read that way. Okay, Recursion. This is the next Blake Crouch book. This one I actually liked better than Dark Matter. I remember more about the plot details on this one. This one played with time and time travel a little bit, which is always going to be something that interests me, especially when it's done well, and it's done well here. I remember being very impressed as I went along with the book and just becoming more and more impressed towards the end. So if you're into stories that play with time, I would highly recommend it. Okay, Mexican Gothic. This was me trying to stretch a little bit and read something that was out of my comfort zone. It got a lot of praise, and so I felt safe going into it, but I did not end up enjoying it, unfortunately. I did finish it, although there were times when I thought about ducking out, and I'll admit that the ending, 15-20% of the book really saved the first 80% for me anyway. But I also learned that I probably just don't like Gothic tales. I think that while I enjoy atmosphere and mood in certain novels and in certain universes, it can't be all about that for me. I need to have some plot driving going on. I need to have some character driving going on, and those two were really missing from the first huge portion of the book for me. That said, if a Gothic tale is something you enjoy, I thought it ended really well. All right, 4 Past Midnight from Stephen King. This is 4 novellas in one book. Some of the novellas I rate higher than others, but overall I'm going to give it an A. In here, I think I liked The Sundog the most, and I think that's what a lot of people enjoy about this book the most. Although it also contains Secret Window, Secret Garden, which a lot of people enjoy. Had that great film adaptation about a decade ago. I know for a lot of people, The Library Policeman kind of drags this one down, and I'll admit it's the weakest story in there, but I enjoyed the other three enough to keep it as a solid A. Next up, we have The Ruin by Dervilla Mctiernan. I think I'm saying that correctly. For me, this story was just kind of middle of the road. I'm going to rate it a C. I liked the plot. The characters were okay. I thought it was paced well, but nothing really stood out for me. I had to go back and look at the synopsis to kind of remember more than just the beginning. I think maybe I went in with too high expectations. Again, I remember it being really well reviewed, and when it came out to be just kind of average, that, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was a solid C. Next, we have The Loop from Jeremy Robert Johnson. Jeremy is a friend of mine, has been for about 15, 16 years now. I met him back when I was making zines and had a podcast for those zines. He actually contributed to an episode where he read a short story of his. The story was called The Sharp-Dressed Man at the End of the Line, and I thought it was awesome, so I've kept up with his career. And he doesn't disappoint with The Loop either. I'm going to give that a solid A. It's kind of a government conspiracy zombie book, but with some nice originality and some twists that I enjoyed. Now for what's probably going to be the most controversial opinion here. I started reading the Dark Tower series. There are many books in the Dark Tower series, and I have heard from everyone how fantastic the Dark Tower series is. But they all caution and warn, the first book is terrible. Just get through the first book really quick, and then continue on with the rest of the series. So I did that, but they're right. The first book is probably a D. It pains me to say because I really like King's work usually, but I marched on and then read The Dark Tower 2. That was a substantial step up, and I think I'm going to rate that one a C. Again, it's not something I was blown away by, but it was decent. By the time I got to the third book in the Dark Tower, I still wasn't hooked, and everyone said that by that point I should be. So about halfway through, I did not finish. I specifically called this tier did not finish instead of F or failed or anything like that. I don't think the book is a failure. I don't think the series is a failure. I just don't think it's for me. And I know that later on things get really cool. And I know that later on the entire Stephen King universe is explained and you get crossovers from other books and all these creatures. So at some point, maybe I will pick up that third book again and continue from where I was, but I haven't done it yet. Next up is the first and only nonfiction book on my list. It's an autobiography by Kevin Pollock. He's a comedian and an actor. He was in Casino, That Thing You Do, A Few Good Men, The Usual Suspects, a ton of great films. He even had a cameo on my first solo album, Erase This. He played the radio DJ that would talk in between the songs, which I only landed because he was a friend of a friend and I made some contacts and I did a favor for him, he did a favor for me. I enjoyed this quite a bit and it's going to get our first B rating. A lot of the stories are funny, a lot of the stories are interesting, especially if these are movies you enjoy and the actors that he worked with, you get some behind the scenes stuff there. And he did the audiobook, so I listened to that, and his delivery was obviously pitch perfect. Next up is The Escape Room by Megan Golden. This is like a C plus B minus for me. I'm gonna go C on this one, but a high C. Again, there was nothing really wrong with it, but there wasn't anything that was like standout fantastic either. All right, next we have Lock Every Door from Riley Sager. Not sure how to pronounce it. I enjoyed this. I don't remember a ton of detail towards the end, but I do remember a lot from the first half of the book, and it had a really strong setup. So we're going to go B on this. Next is another novella short story collection from Stephen King called If It Bleeds. This too, I'm going to go a B on. Some of the stories were great. Some of them were just okay. They kind of average out to a B for me. Looking at the list, I kind of enjoyed it the same amount as 4 Past Midnight, so I'm actually going to move 4 Past Midnight down here into the B column as well, so those two are together. Next up is Bleak Creek by YouTube's own Rhett and Link. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with their channel. They do a great morning show, Good Mythical Morning, on YouTube here every day. And for about 5 or 6 years, DFTBA, my record label, handled all of their merch, t-shirts, CDs, all kinds of fun stuff. Good guys, and good story. I'm going to give it a solid B. I think it's going to go right under Kevin Pollock's book. This is their first fiction book. They have a nonfiction book as well. And they kind of self-inserted themselves as the two kids in the story, but I think that also lent a little bit of authenticity and a little bit of comedy to it that they wouldn't have otherwise had. Next up is Joyland from Stephen King. I read this right after reading Later once I found out that these were all part of like not really a connected series, but they were all published by the same publisher outside of King's normal publisher. They're a hard crime publisher. I liked it. About equal as later, so we're gonna put that right under it. I feel like that's, yeah, they're about equal for me. Okay, Pop Art by Joe Hill. This is the first and only short story, not story collection, just a short story on this list. And it's awesome. If you're into short stories at all, I highly recommend you read Pop Art. There was a university student, I think, who made a short film version of it. I believe you can still watch that on YouTube, at least that's where I saw it. But I highly recommend reading the original story. It's, a 15-minute read. So that's getting an A from me. So while I was reading some of the sci-fi, I wanted to go back and read some of the older sci-fi, some of the golden age sci-fi. So I read I, Robot after seeing the movie like a dozen times with Will Smith. This is the story that movie is based on, and it's quite different, but I enjoyed it just as much as I enjoy the film. So that one's also getting an A from me. I know it kind of looks like I enjoy almost everything that I read, and that's because I'm very selective about what I pick up. So it's not often that I'm wrong or disappointed with a book. Worst case, it's usually like a C rating for me, but most of the time it's an A or B rating. All right, we're getting close to the end here. We only have 3 left. Next up is Duma Key from Stephen King. This is one of those books from him from the 90s, kind of like Bag of Bones. It just like never gets talked about. I loved Bag of Bones, read it many years ago, so I can't put that on the list here. These are just my quarantine books, but I thought Duma Key was good as well. That one's going to get a B rating, I think, but a high B, because I liked it quite a bit. All right, Skeleton Crew, our final short story collection thing here. I picked this up because of The Mist, which is a novella. It's the very first thing in the book before all the shorter short stories. Like with the other collections, you're going to have some highs, you're going to have some lows. I feel like they kind of average out to a B along with the other 2 collections. Again, if there were stories from there that I could pick out and rate individually, some of them would be great and some of them would not be so great. Then we get to the most recent book I read, which just came out last week, Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary. I think a lot of people fell off from Andy Weir's stuff after Artemis. That's unfortunate because Project Hail Mary is definitely S tier. It's funny, it's smart, it's quick-paced, it's everything that's great about The Martian, but told in a brand new story. If you like sci-fi or space or aliens or apocalyptic stories, then Project Hail Mary is one I can't recommend enough. Okay, so there it is, the last 17 months of the books that I read, 17 months of quarantine. I get my second vaccine shot this week, and then I can start reading books out of quarantine. Have you read anything on my list? If so, let me know what you thought. What's your ranking? What did you think of my ranking? Based on the books I have here, is there anything you recommend I should read? Okay, this was fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see everyone soon.